Hello, and thanks for joining me, Eugene Lowe, for your dose of do-it-yourself motivation here on A Slice of Life Hour. Now, much has been said about gratitude and how it contributes to our quality of life, and it's all well and good, I dare say easy, to be grateful when things are, going fairly smoothly, but life has a way of throwing a spanner into the works, and that spanner can be particularly painful, especially when things are going smoothly. Is gratitude then condemned to volatility? Where sentiment is pretty much fair game, depending on the, external triggers, sometimes even internal triggers. And how can we cultivate a consistently grateful outlook, one that is more like an armor rather than just a lovely dress we put on only when the day is going well, when the day is fine. Now, in his book, Common to Uncommon, The Belief to Fulfil Your True Destiny, Andrew Ong writes that we can be grateful for everything that happens to us, including so-called misfortunes, and we're very happy that Andrew is with us here today to deal with that. One of the main chapters in that book on gratitude. So tell us first of all, Andrew, what is your response to this? Because many people find it challenging, especially when they're going through hard times, adversity, to remain grateful. So how can one remain grateful through suffering?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Eugene. Thank you once again for having me back here.
Very glad to have you back, Andrew.
My pleasure, actually, and honor to be here. And I want to thank Chinka, my publisher for Right Editions, for making all the arrangements. And I'm grateful for that.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yep. So to your question, how do you actually, in the midst of apparently overwhelming difficulties, how can one yet remain faithful? Yeah. The only way you can do is to be able to look at the larger picture. Now, throughout history, there are many people who have struggled against almost impossible odds, and how they were able to rise, and they were able to look at the other side of the coin, so to speak. And when they are able to appraise and appropriate the situation correctly, they were able to find that silver lining and to say, yes, things are actually not that bad after all. Yes.
What was the thought process for you personally? Because in your book, you outlined your life story thus far, and you've been through a lot of tribulations and trials in life. Through those most difficult times, was that something that came easily to you?
No. Yeah, just in case the listeners out there think I'm a superhuman. No, I'm not. I'm just your average guy next door. It was difficult. Yes, especially those of especially if one is actually struggling in that crisis, it is always very, very difficult to sit down and take a step back and to say, yes, there is actually something better I can get out of this situation. And it's not that bad after all. So there's actually a process, and this process actually begins from a daily habit. Now, in the course of our everyday living, if we can actually begin to be grateful for the small things in our life. For instance, the first thing we wake up, I'm grateful for the fact that I'm alive. Yeah, because if you remember in my book, I talk about the 4 near-death traumas that I've gone through. Many people in less daunting situations were been taken away. But in my case, I managed to survive. So every day, I'm living on borrowed time. So I'm fully conscious of the fact that I'm grateful that I'm alive here today.
Okay, so in many ways then, gratitude is not something that we should do after the fact. We should be practicing this even before hardships happen, even before challenges hit us.
That's right.
So that when it does, when we are in a period of difficulty, that what we've built up, that resilience that we've built up, over time, will stand us in better stead.
Yes. So I actually want to address a little bit here.
Yes.
Many people in the course of hearing this, in the course of my work with them, they say, Andrew, but I can't think of anything to be grateful for, So I help them to understand the fact that they were talking to me alive and conscious of decision, conscious of interaction, conscious of logic, That was enough reason to be grateful.
Yes.
Yeah, so we start to look around us. I mean, today is a fine weather here in Singapore. There's no rain, there's no storm, there's no haze. Don't you think we ought to be grateful for that?
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
we ought
that,
to be, right?
Mm.
And here I am live, live with thousands, possibly tens of thousands of people listening to this program. I'm grateful for that, because it now gives them a chance to go into my mind exactly how I look at this thing called gratitude.
That's right. I mean, the human tendency is always to focus on the negatives, right? And just overlook what we still have. Even in the face of adversity, I think we can all agree that, even through the worst of times, focusing on what we still have or going for us is the most, this is the best way forward. In many ways, I suppose it is the only way forward. You cannot move forward if you dwell on the negatives and start going into a downward spiral.
That's right.
So you really have to hit that bottom and then you work yourself up.
So maybe I want to mention a few of the cases I met. I mean, this lady in her early 50s was diagnosed with kidney failure, A very close friend. She gave me a call and went to see her when she was hooked up to the dialysis machine. And can you imagine, do you know what she said? Andrew, I am grateful, that my kidneys are gone now and I'm on this dialysis machine. And you could see the obvious joy in her face. And the reason I asked her, can you help me understand this? She said, Andrew, because I'm alive. It meant that she was conscious, that she was capable of decision making. And this lady, she was very grateful because she managed to encounter God again in her life, and she made right her life with God, and she's right now ready to meet her Creator should she die.
Yeah.
Can you see? So what I'm trying to say is that in this classic example, almost in any worst case scenario any person can go through, there's always that little spark that you got to look for. And for the fact that what is the positive thing about her? In this case, she is alive. She's able to take note of that and to take action based on the fact that she's alive.
And by consciously choosing that more empowering meaning to whatever situation that's happening to us, that is exactly what enables her to continue building on her life rather than resigning herself to the fact that she is hooked up to a machine and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And you started off that chapter on gratitude in your book by giving people a lot of examples of how we as human beings get stressed out every day. Things like our children's grades, for making bad decisions in business, even for someone who may be incarcerated, in the prison cell. You say still be thankful because in spite of this, there is always something else for you. And being forward looking as well. That's one of the tools and the strategies towards gratitude that you've outlined in your book as well. And that is going to be one of the things that we're going to talk about, because we're going to come back and get Andrew to share some of these paths to gratitude. There are many paths towards gratitude. And Andrew will share more about that and also more about the rationale behind being grateful. Why should we be grateful? Yeah, that's coming up here on A Slice of Life on 9th Grade Live with me, Eugene Low, and author Andrew Ong, who has written the book Common to Uncommon, The Belief to Fulfil Your True Destiny, in which gratitude is a huge chunk of that book. It's published by Write Editions. More information at writeeditions.com. That's WRITE, writeeditions.com. A Slice of Life continues here on 9th Grade Live in just a bit. Thanks for joining me, Eugene Low, on A Slice of Life, on 9th Grade Life, for your dose of do-it-yourself motivation. Now, it's been said that living is not purely a biological thing. I mean, we may be walking, we may be breathing, we may be doing, but we're not really living. Many of us are really like walking dead, to put it in a very morbid sense of the word. In a sense, getting out of bed, not having expectation, going to a job we find a drag or a chore, coming back to relationships that we don't really want to be in, and then like going to bed and not being able to sleep properly, and then repeating that cycle day in, day out. Can we truly called it living. And then some people have also mentioned that, some of the dying actually are more alive than those who are living. So and key to that is that attitude of gratitude, like we mentioned earlier with my guest today, Andrew Ong, author of Common to Uncommon, The Belief to Fulfill Your True Destiny. An attitude of gratitude really is about, no matter what situation you're in at the moment, being able to be grateful that you still have other things going for you. Even if you're in a very difficult situation, we can be grateful for the fact that we are alive, that we are able to still communicate and contribute to others, to society, even though we may be encumbered in some way. And we're going to find out more about Andrew and that chapter in his book on gratitude. Tell us, Andrew, what is the rationale behind having gratitude and the hope for a better tomorrow? How does it benefit us?
Okay, the things that happen to us in the past, resulting in our present state of affairs, whatever that state of affairs may be, the fact is there's nothing we can do to alter the past, to change our present. Okay, so I begin with this fact. So if indeed that is the case, then how are we going to live our future, okay, is going to depend on what our outlook of the future is all about. And for that to happen, are we able to take stock of our present environment? You see, that I mentioned that we cannot do anything about present state of affair, right? So what are the things, therefore, that we can be grateful about? The lady I mentioned earlier about the kidney failure patient did a marvelous, outstanding job. Why? Because she had lived her life in a lot of abuse, with possibly lifestyle, and she's probably got the years of accumulation. And there was nothing she could do about the past to affect her present. But what she decided to do was to take stock of the fact that she was still alive, still coherent, still able to reason, and to finally make right her relation. And if you were to meet this lady, I mean, you cannot imagine, how could a lady hook up in the dialysis machine full of joy, peace, and laughter even. So this is exactly what she did. So the rationale why we need to be grateful is, do we want to live our present in the most empowering manner that we can? And there we need to look at the positives. Yes. So I advocate in my book a daily routine for our listeners out there, that if you really want your life to change, are you prepared to just spend maybe 30 minutes of quiet time by yourself every day? All right, if you can, do it the first thing in the morning. Now, for those of us who have a whole myriad of things to do, responsibilities to attend to send the children to school, to go marketing, to go to school, to go to office, I would suggest you actually wake up 30 minutes before you do all of this. And the first thing to do is to write out 100 reasons for which you ought to be grateful for. Now, yeah, it's very tough, especially for those who have never attempted this before. Yeah. I mean, we just had an exercise recently in my church. One of the leaders suggested, why don't we spend some time writing some reasons, They gave us something like 10 minutes. Yeah. I could see the struggle amongst my friends. Right. In 10 minutes, some of them wrote 3, some 4, some 5 reasons for which they ought to be grateful. But in my case, in 10 minutes, I wrote 52 reasons why I ought to be grateful. Why? Because I've been doing this on a daily basis. Yes. So if you have never done this before, it can be quite daunting. Yes. But if you enter into a habit, then you begin to see many things that's happening around you, and for which many of us take it for granted,
It's about looking deeper. It's looking further than... It's seeing the same things, but with more open eyes, really, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could even start with the fact that you can even write.
Right.
That is already one of the 100, and I'm sure from there you can think of many more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's something when you start to do as a habit, you will discover that your 100 reasons today were completely different from the 100 yesterday.
Yes.
And the 100 that you will write tomorrow will be very completely different from the 100 that you wrote today. And suddenly your whole horizon, your landscape changes.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, that is the wealth of the common man, if you think about it, right? Because that is something that we all have access to, whether we are, say,
Rich
working.
or poor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
CEO
Graduate,
or
non-graduate. Yeah,
Exactly.
it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yes. It's because most people who are perhaps are in the position or higher position, they may have lost sight of the riches that they have right at their fingertips. Whereas the common man, by the simple virtue of being able to think about this self-reflection, is able to access that wealth anytime, and that is so empowering. Yes. We're chatting today with Andrew Ong, who is my guest today. He is author of Common to Uncommon, The Belief to Fulfil Your True Destiny, published by Right Editions. We're talking about one of the main chapters in his book on gratitude, and we'll come back in about 15 minutes after a check on the latest headlines, sports and business, and get Andrew to tell us what are the different pathways towards achieving this sort of gratitude. One of the ways he mentioned earlier was the writing down. Every day write down 100 things you can be grateful for. May sound daunting, and I was wrong by saying that's tough, because it actually is very easy, right? As demonstrated by Andrew earlier on. Try it, and we'll talk to you in about 15 minutes to give you even more pathways towards gratitude. I'm Eugene Low on A Slice of Life Hour on 938 Live. How does gratitude add to the richness and quality of our lives, and how can it help us to focus on what is good and possible and that we can take to the next level? An entire chapter on gratitude has been devoted to the book Common to Uncommon, The Belief to Fulfil Your True Destiny by author Andrew Ong, published by Right Editions. It is available at all bookstores and soon to be available online at Amazon.com. In the meantime, we have Andrew, the author of the book, to share with us that chapter, very important chapter in his book, to fulfill our true destiny, and that is true through gratitude. First of all, I'd like you to, share, one of the things that you have experienced when encountering the people who have been talking to you about gratitude, something that you feel is important, because you find a lot of people having a rather sort of misplaced conception about this gratitude. So tell us.
Okay.
Andrew.
Now, in addition to what we discussed in the earlier segment about writing the daily routine, in a nutshell, there are only two areas you actually need to focus on. First one is to look at us, look at ourselves, and see what we have, and making a conscious decision to do what we have. Right. Now, the second part, and this is the only other part in the whole exercise, is to look at other people. And look at what they don't have, and despite not having what they're supposed to have, what are they doing with their lives? All right, so I want to mention a few classic examples. In fact, 3 of them. 1 hail all the way from China, and 2 right here from our local Singapore. All right, the first one is a 23-year-old boy who, at 10 years old, back in China, while playing hide and seek, he hid in one of the power station, and there was a loose wire, and he got electrocuted. When he awoke from a 45-day coma, he discovered both his hands were amputated. So can you imagine having got used to a normal body, and then suddenly at 10 years old, you lost your hands, What did you do? I mean, at age 16, 6 years later, he decided to learn swimming, and took part in the swimming competition for the disabled, and he won 2 gold medals and a silver medal. 3 years later, at age 19, he decided to learn to play the piano. 4 years later, at age 23, he entered China Got Talent contest, and the judge asked him, "Hey, can you tell us your little bit, what is this all about?" He said, he repeated his story, and he said he had 2 options. At age 10, he said one was to slowly fade away and die, and the other was to see how I could live my life as a true champion. And when the judge asked him, ordinary folks learning the piano already found it so difficult playing with the hands, How did you manage to do it with the toes? And was his answer. He said, as far as I knew, and as far as I know now, there has never been a decree or a proclamation by any government or any person that the piano is to be played with fingers alone. Can you imagine? And here there he was,
true.
China Got Talent contest, age 23, of course, very obviously, he went on to win the championship. Now, there's another person right here in our local context by the name of Christian Ko. Some of us who are in the athletics may be familiar with her. She's actually a Singapore woman triathlete who, during one of the practice session on a bicycle, she was hit by a lorry and she was dragged something like 20 meters by a speeding lorry. Bedridden for 2.5 months, and after 19 or so operations with a broken body completely, she proclaimed that I will not let this accident win. And I will be greater than this accident. And within a year, she decided to take part in a marathon. And in May of 2012, just 2 years ago, she completed the marathon. Now, these are classic examples of people who've been struck down very early in life, I mean, with a bright future completely gone. How they decided not to look at what they no longer had, but to decide what to do with whatever they still had with their lives. So there is this Liu Wei in China, Christian Ko, and then there's a personal friend of mine by the name of Raja Singh. Now, some of you, for my commando friends who are out there listening to this program, you will know who I'm talking about. Raja Singh was a top triathlete, and his dream was to become a top world-class triathlete. But sadly, in 1983, during one of the training sessions again on the bicycle, he hit the back of a lorry parked on his route, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. Now, because he was a triathlete, he had a mind of triathlete. He said, I don't care what I no longer have. I will just push and do the best with what I still had. He went on to represent Singapore in the Paralympics. And in one of the regional Asian meet in Kobe, Japan, he clocked the marathon and set the course record for the half marathon. Now, this guy today is a very successful businessman. He owns a huge UB industrial park, doing business selling. He began with selling equipment for the people who were injured in sports. And today he is branched into a tremendous, he employs something like 25 staff, and he's a very successful businessman. Now, these are classic examples in which people who have easily given up, but decided to take hold of their lives and say, I will not let this past, this present state affect me. I will look and see what I can do with what I still have.
Yes.
So this is exactly what we all need to do, and watch the champions of life. How did they overcome insurmountable odds, and achieve greatness, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, stories like these, put us all to shame,
Right.
really, right? I mean, and these are the people who have, been cut down by life in so many ways, more ways than one, and have found themselves, despite their, disabling of their physical, faculties, found that they were able to achieve even stronger, mental capabilities, through their trials and their tribulations, and that is one of the ways we ourselves, as able-bodied people, I suppose, can also find that gratitude, because compared to these people, we have so much more going for us.
Right.
Yeah, so that is one of the ways we can actually work our way towards gratitude. There are many other different pathways that I have gleaned, from reading that chapter in your book, and another one of them is something that you mentioned briefly earlier about how we often distress ourselves by, focusing on things we can scarcely do anything about. And one of those things is the past, right? Because we cannot do anything about the past. Whatever hurt us, whatever errors we made, whatever disabled us in any sort of way, it's done. So the only way is to look forward. And that is what helps to enable us towards charting that pathway towards gratitude.
So I want to mention, in the course of my discussing this subject with many participants, one of the very common response I get is people who innocently say, Andrew, I cannot and I don't want to because I don't have the time, the 30 minutes to write down my 100 reasons to be grateful. In fact, I can't even find one reason to be grateful for. All right? So they enter into a delusion that they are not being ungrateful. By not being consciously grateful, they say, but I'm not being ungrateful. Now, I want to mention here that this is a very dangerous state of affairs. Why? When a person cannot actually articulate and say out, I am really grateful for A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, a list of things. They could be unfulfilled in some way. Yes. They could be angry. They could be upset. Yes. They could be hurt. They could be going through a host of negative experiences for which there had not been closure. Yeah. And in a worst case scenario, they could be in the early stages of depression.
Right. So saying that, I'm not ungrateful and that's fine, right?
It's not fine.
To them, it's fine.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's not just not fine, it's dangerous. So maybe we can just look at a very recent example, Robin Williams. I mean, we all know what happened to Robin Williams. Now, if you analyze carefully, I mean, this guy has achieved so much. He brought so much joy, so much laughter to the world, And one of the possible reasons why he took that path was because he was unable to be grateful for what he had. He was chasing after something that he did not have. Right? So I want to encourage all our listeners out there that if you are undergoing or experience some challenges in your life that is leading you to the point in which you are unable to be grateful on a consistent basis, be mindful, be aware that you could be entering that path that will lead to depression. So I hope you will take some action, concrete action, to get yourself out of that path.
Yeah. It's the nature of human beings to be easily unsatisfied, isn't it? I mean, like you mentioned, chasing after that something that we don't have or we can't have, that is often the precursor to unhappiness and discontentment,
Which will lead to depression.
Possibly, yes, depression, that's right. So, taking that proactive step towards saying that, I'm going to be, in a sense, I mean, those people who tell you that, being not grateful is okay to them, it's akin to saying that, I'm not unhappy. It's like saying, why should I be happy? I'm not unhappy, that's fine, but it isn't fine.
It isn't fine, that's right, it isn't fine.
Yeah, because you expose yourself to external triggers that may impact your mood, and then from then on, it could lead to other detrimental things in life as well. So, how else, does gratitude add to the richness and quality of our lives, Andrew? Given the few minutes that we have from our show today, some reflections that we can take away from the show.
Okay, maybe just one. I recall one of the beautiful sayings, my late father, shared with me, because we actually grew up in abject poverty in Singapore, poor enough to qualify for government aid, poor enough to qualify for aid from the Christian communities in school, When the school rang, my whole class will rush to the canteen. For me, I take a sober walk to the principal office. I had 10 cents given to me. Now, when you grew up in an environment like that, my father said, we don't have everything in life to enjoy life, but we have life to enjoy everything. Can you see how the perspective shifts from a complete situation of want to one of satisfaction, contentment, deciding to do with our lives with what we have and not feel sad or discontented about what you don't have. Right. So in a nutshell, it begins with a deep and abiding awareness of who we are and what we really have.
Exactly.
And for which nobody can take away from us. And it's got nothing to do with wealth. It's got nothing to do with status. It's got nothing to do with education, qualification. It's got nothing to do with race or religion. It's an awareness of who you are and what you still have and what you can do with what you have.
Exactly. It's how rich and fulfilled you want to be,
Right.
not how much money you have, really, or how many paper qualifications you have. And a lot of us have not grown up in those times where you have grown up in that generation where life was so much tougher than now. But of course, to us, this is the normal. The new normal is that we become unhappy with the life that we have right now, which is compared to the generations past, is already considered to them. We are living in the lap of luxury, There's nothing to complain about, really. But because our perspectives are different, our upbringing is different. Therefore, having that ability to take things into perspective and to reflect, on these realities, and these stories that you have shared as well in your book are so crucial to helping us, feel better about ourselves and our lives and our path towards gratitude as well. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming in
My
today
pleasure.
and elaborating on that chapter in your book on gratitude and many other, useful things you can learn from Andrew's book, which is called Common to Uncommon, The Belief to Fulfil Your True Destiny. And that's by Andrew Ong, published by Wright Editions, available at all bookstores and soon to be available online as well. If you have something to share with me on the show as well to help us all live happier lives, I suppose that's the main goal of any human being, really, is to be happy. Do email me. It's eugene@mediacorp.com.sg. I'm Eugene Low, and this has been A Slice of Life Hour on 938 Live.